Sila is the whole purpose is to calm the body, speech, and mind, and that there's no bargaining around it. That to be a human being, Buddhahood is not far away. And if you can't figure out how to be a human being, what are you going to do? So my story is about what this community has really meant in regards to me being able to be a human being, to really grow into this humanity, to be able to begin to actualize my potential. And that when I decided to come here to the Abbey back in 2004, I had two fairly serious obstacles, the big ones, besides all the thousands of smaller ones. The two big ones, which I have very affectionately called the F word and the C word. The F word was I was terrified of losing my freedom, my individuality, my autonomy to be able to do what I want, go where I wanted, have what I want to eat, wear whatever, have whatever friends I wanted. And even though I was in love with the Dharma and I really felt very, very strongly attracted to what Venerable was going to do here, I was so excited about the monastery that I had some serious ambivalence about what I would have to give up. All right, so my biggest one was the F word, the fear of losing my freedom. And then the second one was commitment. What was I going to have to What kind of commitment was I going to have to make to this process now that I had said yes? And to show you how anxious and how these things ruled my life when I first decided to come here and support Venerable, I wrote her a letter. And when I look at what I wrote in that letter, I'm absolutely horrified. But this gives you an idea on what the state of my mind was. Okay, so Nance writes her a letter about maybe 6 months before I had told her that I would really like to come and support her for a few years, kind of get things sort of up and running and be here with her. I wrote her a letter that had my negotiables, my non-negotiables in it. I needed a stipend to pay off my debt. I wanted 2 days off every week. And 1 weekend a month, I wanted to go away and just leave and go someplace else besides be at the Abbey. I wanted to keep all of my stuff, including a U-Haul filled with plants. I didn't want to live in the main house with her. I wanted to live way, way, way down in that little cabin down there at the end of the garden with my cat. So she agreed. I think she was kind of desperate because she really needed help. And it was just me who said, I'll do it on these terms. Now, in hindsight, I have to say, right at the get-go, she was so wise because she had this wild horse offering to come and live at the Abbey, and she gave that horse a very, very big pasture. I was pretty untamed. My freedom, my description of freedom, or my definition, what I thought was all about making samsara comfortable, even at the Abbey. I mean, I was strategizing big time on how I could get all my samsaric delights met, because I was the first person, so it was Venerable, the two kitties, Achala and Manjushri, and me for the first while. But this is where the absolute brilliance of Venerable's long-term thinking is. From the very beginning, we're talking like 2004, we had a schedule. There was only 2 of us here. And to be honest with you, it hasn't changed much from the one that we have now. We had morning and evening practice. From the start, I did the cooking. Venerable made great carrot cake. We had the BBC, which I'm doing right now. It was at 7:30 in the morning. It was really a Bodhisattva breakfast corner. And right off the start, we had offering service, and right off the start, she was giving teachings. 14 years ago, not even a year into it, Venerable had it. She put that schedule, that framework, that construct together, and it provided for this wild one a semblance of protection, a semblance of safety. We worked in the forest. We built buildings. Venerable taught the Dharma in that little conservative town called Newport at the public library. We had teachings on Thursday and Friday. She was the only monastic here for 3 years. There were all these wild lay people coming here to check it out, to see what it was like. And those who came, we weren't used to having this kind of framework to work on our minds. But from the very, very beginning, ethical conduct, bodhicitta, purification, compassion. You would do this in the morning. We would do this little community thing with the practice and the BBC and offering our food. And then we'd have to go deal with the contractor, or we'd have to go deal with the flooded toilet. Just like Venerable Wu Yin said, you do the practice and then you go and meet life where it comes at you. And as time went on, I could see my mind and the others' minds being tamed with the Dharma. And also understanding that Venerable had an incredible confidence in the Dharma, that if anybody was even half willing to meet the Dharma, that their minds would change. Freedom for me was starting to be redefined from my life pretty much being run by my craving, my attachment, my aversion, my jealousy, my confusion, my fear, to within a few years to getting some space in my mind, getting some clarity, getting some peace, and due to the ethical conduct, some restraint and some sense of self-discipline. I came in here with my self-centered thought on overdrive. Me, I. And slowly it started to get tamed. It took about 4 years before I really started to notice some really noticeable changes in my mind. And I truly believe that it was the schedule, the practice, the teachings, the offering service, all within the context of ethical conduct, bodhicitta, compassion, and a whole lot of humor, a whole lot of laughter. And back then, freedom was also being redefined for me by Venerable with her absolute trust in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And also, she teaches very much in the way that Venerable Wu Yin does, is that she would set you off on a project and you would learn from making your mistakes. You'd learn it as you went, and you just kept going. And I've always believed from the beginning that one of the fundamental things that this community supplies is huge capacity building. I would have never been able to learn and be the person I am if I hadn't been put in a situation where I had to learn things I'd never thought I could do. And that I thought I would get to a certain point, and then Venerable would just tug it just a little bit farther. And there was always support, there was always encouragement. And also to understand that part of my freedom, my fear from freedom, was that I was going to have to give up my love of beauty, my creativity, my art, my wanting to work with my hands, my leadership skills. And I came to realize that those things were never in jeopardy here at the Abbey. That whatever you had, whatever talents, whatever skills, whatever expertise you had, you brought that on board, and it was nourished, and it was fostered, and it was encouraged. And so, 14 years later, we've got a community that each one wears at least 4 or 5 hats. The competency, the resiliency, the expertise of this community is mind-blowing because of Venerable's fundamental belief within the context of ethical conduct, you can do anything. Within the context of bodhicitta and compassion, you can do anything. Now, you had to understand that if you were going to bring your talents and your abilities and skill, any attachment you had to reputation or praise or your identity about it was not going to stick around too long, all right? That was in continual jeopardy. Your self-centered thought, your self-grasping, your I can do this, I'm great at this, I'm the only one who knows how, it would get just thrown into the rock tumbler and just tumbled around. But the gifts, the skills, the willingness were always encouraged and always welcomed. Now, it was kind of interesting because in the beginning, to have all of this wonderful growth and transformation, being with my teacher and being with this growing community and learning to tame my mind, that there were trade-offs for this kind of hands-on, in-your-face practice and training monastic life that really grows and nourishes all of our good qualities. I mean, and in the beginning, there were some serious considerations that I had to give these things up. Like, Venerable Jampa, I can't go to Trader Joe's. I don't buy food. We don't buy food. You can't own your own car. I mean, there's nothing really I grieve that for years. Even with the car insurance, the car payments, the mechanics, I still grieve that. You can't order Chinese takeout or have pizza delivered. In fact, we don't go to the restaurant much. Nobody invites us, so we don't go. You can't sit at a coffee shop all day and just talk. You don't have Facebook, you don't have Twitter, you don't have Instagram accounts. In fact, you don't even own a phone. You can't sleep in without somebody coming and knocking on your door saying, "How are you? Where are you? It's 5:45. And last but not least, you can't go and get your hair done anymore. And at the start, it seemed like really big trade-offs because you get used to getting your cravings met. And in the beginning, you can't see the treasure that you've kind of dropped in on. And what's very important to understand is that it's not like samsara stops giving you trouble once you move here. But the small freedoms of the mind begin to give you some space so you can deal with the problems. Problems do become smaller than they do appear in the mirror. We do a lot of purification, practice on bodhicitta, teachings on wisdom and emptiness, and as time went on, I found myself a lot less self-occupied, less full of myself, less attached to my opinions, my views. And because you're surrounded by others, you have to think about others. It's a radical concept when you first move here. It is totally amazing to know how self-preoccupied we are until you live in community where how you behave and what you say affects other people. And there's something about growing together, witnessing for each other, that growth in the Dharma, no matter what, is really inspiring. You can't sleep in at the Abbey as long as samsara exists. And that is something that you agree to. And in my mind, through this, Sravasti Abbey is really becoming a force of good in the world. I really do believe that. There are some wonderful, strong, wise, caring, tempered, funny. I've never laughed so hard in my life. Wise, compassionate people who have grown through the Dharma, through the guidance of our teacher, and through the schedule and the framework in which the Abbey community lives. And as Venerable said the other day, that not only is the Abbey becoming a force of good in the world, but each day, each and every one of us here in the community is agreeing to the best of our ability, is stepping up to the plate, not just individually, but collectively, because I'm really starting to see that the world needs each and every one of us. We're not in good shape here, the world. The craving, the jealousy, the anger, the hostility is really quite intense. And I can see that the Abbey and all of us in the Sangha are playing a more and more crucial part to being able to help the world. And then as far as the C word, it's very connected to the F word. The whole idea of the 10th benefit of keeping the precepts to be able to sustain the Dharma forever. Wouldn't you say that that is an incredible invitation for a long-term commitment to be able to say, I'm here, to be able to sustain the Dharma in the world forever? That is probably as deep as a commitment can go. And it's not like all of us here have got that. It's all a work in progress, but there is something profound about this Many of us, and I can attest to this in myself, that we have these drop-downs in our minds. You know, like at a computer, you got your drop-down, which lists all the options we have if things don't work out. Okay? I'm going to try this and see how it goes, and if it doesn't work out, I've got A, B, C, D. I mean, have you ever noticed that when you step into a new endeavor, you're always looking for the exit sign? And there's something about living here that you decide that you're not going to do that. It's not like we don't have to renegotiate and rethink things here at the Abbey. But the opt-out drop-down has got to be really addressed. That you really are choosing to not run. You're choosing not to distract yourself. It's helpful to get the specifics of what you're stepping into so you're not going in blind. You know, what am I going to have to do for this? Am I going to be of benefit? Because I think for some of us, commitment is kind of scary. We think it's either going to suck us dry or it's going to drown us. That all of that fear is based on absolutely no reality. I mean, can you imagine if Venerable Master Wu Yin or Venerable Children had a drop-down box that said, this temple's too much work. These disciples are just a headache. Venerable Children, like, I'm out of here. If they had not been able to totally embody the commitment and the trust in the three jewels, Venerable Wu Yin and Venerable Children, they could have done lifelong retreats someplace up in some beautiful place and leave us to our our own craziness. Huh? Our own FNC, yes. There would be no Buddhist institute, no Dharma teachings, no social programs, no books, no retreats, no abbey, no gorgeous place to practice. If they had been afraid to commit to growing and sustaining the Dharma. And even in the midst of great obstacles, if you've heard the stories, I mean, these two masters have not had an easy task of it. But their confidence in the three jewels and their own self-confidence has been remarkable to watch. And it continues to grow. You know, our venerable masters they don't get in a certain place in their practice and they just stay put. I've seen venerable transform living here. So contentment nourishes really big thinking. It fuels creativity and problem solving. It brings joy, a great sense of humor, tenacity, and determination that's really, really deep. And in a community, you get support. You don't feel like a lone wolf around here. You feel like you've got some support. So as the years have gone on, the F word and the C word have become less emboldened in my mind. I have seen a transformation in myself. I've seen a transformation in each and every person who has been willing to put away the drop-down box and stick around. And I see the benefit that this Abbey continues to bring to the world, and I am absolutely humbled and honored to be here.